Okay, kids, it's time for another episode of the Fueled by Weird podcast, the only podcast that wants to wish everyone a happy cotton candy day, daddies. I'm Chris Daly, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with writer, producer, podcaster, comedian, all around awesome guy, Jordan Morris. Jordan, how's it going, man?
Hey, I'm doing good. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Dude, I'm so glad to have you. I'm, like I said before we started, I'm a super huge fan of yours. This is just surreal for me. I even got my
Thanks, dude.
I got my cotton candy Randy shirt on.
Hey, look at that. The Andy Warhol design.
Yeah, I have most of them. And I have the cotton candy Randy mermaid pin. So
There's, he looks good on merch. He
it's
looks good
true.
on merch.
It's true. All right. So when I start these things out, I like to usually do a bit of an icebreaker question just to kind of break
Sure,
the ice.
yes.
So
Let's do it.
question today is which two animals would you have swap sounds?
Which two animals would you have swap sounds?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great question. Do you have a stock answer for this? Do you have one that could you have like a great example that I can jump off of?
I do. I'll flip and I'll start with my answer. My answer is, and I was gonna go specific, but I think I'm gonna go a little bit more broad with my answer. Swapping bears with ducks.
Okay.
So
I think that works.
bears would quack and ducks would
Right.
growl.
You think people that would lead to people being more like more apt to go up to a bear, and therefore this will lead to more bear maulings?
Yeah,
I don't want to
exactly.
get anyone killed with my choice.
Sure. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I think that these animals make sounds for a reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's see. I think it'd be cute if cats made snake noises.
That's pretty good.
I guess they both kind of hiss. So
Yeah.
maybe that isn't a great swap.
Well, I mean, a meowing snake is kind of horrifying, to be honest.
I'll yeah, you're right. See, maybe I'll do this. Here's two of my favorite animal
Okay,
sounds. I'm a cat weirdo.
that's okay.
Love a cat, love a
Okay.
meow. So maybe I'll swap the cat and the goat. I
Ooh.
love a goat noise, especially a baby goat noise. I don't know
Ooh.
if you've ever heard a baby goat. It's one of the cutest noises.
I have. It's pretty good.
So yeah, I think I'll just swap my two favorite animal noises. Goats will now meow and cats will now go ba ba ba.
That works. That's a good answer.
Thank you.
All
Cute for
right.
cute.
Very much. All right. So, with the idea behind the show, Fueled by Weird, it's a concept where, all the stuff you're into, all the stuff your hobbies, your interests, all that stuff, the stuff that makes you who you are, that's what essentially fuels your weird. So, what kind of things are you into?
What kind of things am I into? So, yes, just love, freedom, togetherness, the word of God.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
the teachings of Christ. I am, yeah. So growing up was, into kind of your basic nerd stuff. I'll cite some blind spots.
Okay.
I have not been into Star Trek until very recently. That's a kind of a
Okay.
new one for me, but like Star Trek, D&D, and I didn't get into horror until later. I'm a big horror guy now. But I was a real scaredy cat until like mid high school.
Okay.
So like name your down the middle nerd stuff, and that was me. Um
Okay.
so like a big video game guy, especially your Mortal Kombats and your Street Fighters.
Same.
I'm still very big into both those games.
Yep.
Bought the new versions this year. Do you still keep up with them? Do you buy
I
all the latest sequels?
I usually do. I haven't got the new ones yet, but the new
They're
Mortal
great.
Kombat, especially the fact that they've kind of rebooted the whole story, like or alternate universe, I guess, not really
Well,
rebooted.
get ready. Not really.
Yeah. So I'm pretty excited, especially some of those DLC characters. They look
Yeah.
pretty tasty. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's so cool how they call in the guest characters. It's always like a ton of
Yeah.
fun to watch Sub-Zero fight Freddy.
Right?
um yeah, they definitely have like a real fan's imagination for that stuff. It's like what do people want to see, and they try and make it happen. I always appreciate that. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I know I love how bonkers both those stories have gotten, both Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, and like
for sure.
this this new Mortal Kombat, it's like we're rebooting it, but not really. People still remember the old timeline, and they're fighting to get it back in. Anyway, it's wild. I love how insistent they are,
Mm,
that these stories need to keep going. It's really, they don't have to do it, but we appreciate it.
absolutely.
Um, yeah, so that stuff, and yeah, and I was a big reader. I was a big library kid, and also a big comic book kid. So yeah, I was definitely like, very into the Narnia books. And like, I started reading comics in the 90s. So, like, a lot of X-Men, a lot of Spider-Man, a lot of like, Spider-Man stories where he has a clone. So, a lot of, if that paints a picture of the era of comics.
Oh yeah, I grew up around the same time, so I'm right there with you.
Oh, cool. Yes. So,
Yeah.
you love a Jim Lee X-Men.
Oh yeah,
Cool.
big time.
Yeah, and also, and this is also kind of something that has changed for me recently. I was a big Marvel kid, but I'm more of a DC adult. I kind of like left DC as a kid because I thought Superman was corny or whatever, but now I'm a little more into the DCU. Yeah, I mean, obviously the X-Men and Spidey still have a big place in my heart, and it's, fun to follow all the Marvel movies, even though the quality is up and down,
Yeah,
in my opinion. But it's still
sure.
like fun to follow, and it's, cool that the story keeps going. So yeah, but yeah, these are some of my nerddoms.
That's awesome. And yeah, I'm the same way with Marvel DC. I like me a good Marvel TV show, movie, whatever.
Uh-huh.
But since I was a kid, I've always kind of leaned more toward DC because, like you, I also thought Superman was kind of corny, but I've always been a big Green Lantern fan.
Oh
So
yeah, sure.
I definitely have leaned toward DC quite a bit, and I still have hope that we're going to get some good DC movies coming soon once we get everything restarted again.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. And I'll go a little deeper and say that I did think Superman was corny as a kid, but I really love him now. I really love a good Superman story. And I think yeah, sometimes, that edgy 90s sensibility, I think, made us all a little bit embarrassed to like Superman, but
Sure.
he's the greatest.
Yeah, for sure. And that's cool that you're getting into Star Trek now. Myself, my dad was a huge Trekkie, so
Oh yeah.
I've been ingratiated with Star Trek since I was a kid. So
Oh cool.
that's
Yeah,
great.
it's a real fun world, and a real fun, like, I like how it is a optimistic version of the future. We
Yeah.
are so um we are so inundated with apocalypse stories now and dystopia stories, and I like those. I like those a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Turning on Star Trek Strange New Worlds is what did it for me,
Okay.
which I think is great. And
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of really started. I mean, maybe it's kind of similar to starting to appreciate Superman a little later in life, but like something that's a little more optimistic, a little more hopeful, and a little like, more about how humans can be, um, you know, kind and work together if we're given the chance. So I kind of like those themes. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
makes sense. And yeah, I've still not warmed up on Superman all the way, but I do have to say Henry Cavill's Superman definitely started gearing me toward that direction of
Oh
warming up
yeah,
a
Cavill's
little
great.
bit.
He's great. It would be
Yeah.
be great to, see him do another movie. Doesn't sound like we'll get one for a while, but
Yeah,
I thought he was a great Superman.
I do too. All right, so I kind of want to shift gears now, and I want to talk about, what was it that got you, you're a great writer, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. What was it that got you into wanting to become a writer in the first place?
Sure. Yeah, I think, I started out very broadly just wanting to be in comedy.
Mm,
Maybe one of the nerddoms I did not mention was just being a comedy nerd. I was a huge Simpsons kid, a huge Mystery Science Theater 3000 kid, an
yeah.
SNL kid.
Mm,
All these were very important to me. And then later, like The Kids in the Hall and Mr. Show and some of those like weirder, more alternative sketch shows.
yeah.
um yeah, so I think I like graduated high school with this very general desire to do something with comedy. We had a little improv group in my high school, and that was like a big deal to me, like doing improv. um I would maybe rather choke to death than watch a tape of me doing improv in high school. So if anyone out there has one, please destroy it. But yeah, I think it really kind of like planted the idea in my head, like, oh yeah, like, all right, I can be funny, I can be creative. So when I went to college, I kind of like explored that. I did like a high school or a college improv group and a college sketch group, and did a like goofy college radio show on the campus radio station. So I was like trying out being a comedy person, and yeah, and I liked it. I really had fun with it. Again, all of that early stuff was probably a real bad, and I apologize to anyone who had to watch me or listen to me do it, but yeah, it kind of like got the ball rolling in my head.
Nice.
And our college sketch group, we were called Prank the Dean, and we did some shows at the very, very first uh like editions of the San Francisco Sketch Fest, which is now this thing that's been going for years and years, and it goes for the whole month and is a huge deal. But it was a smaller comedy festival, and our sketch group got to do a couple shows with some more established sketch groups, and that was really cool to meet, like, oh yeah, these are like professional working funny people. They mostly live in LA and New York, and they audition and they do writing samples. So it was kind of fun to see like professional funny people and kind of see what they do and what their lives were like. So yeah, so like after college, I from that stuff had a couple of contacts, and like the Upright Citizens Brigade Comedy Theater was like just opening in LA. It's this kind of big comedy institution now, and a lot of comedy writers kind of went through there, and it was a big kind of learning ground for a lot of comedy people. So they were just opening up, so I was like taking classes there. So I was like doing improv in the evenings, and being a PA, a production assistant in my 9 to 5. So I was like getting coffee and
Sure.
copying scripts, and having people's cars detailed, and getting clothes for Fran Drescher's dog and whatever. And I'm gonna turn off the phone here. So I was kind of doing that, and then when I got off, I would go and do bad improv shows for 10 people. And that was kind of the start of comedy. And yeah, so I was kind of doing it just for the love of it for a while, and then eventually started to get paid for it.
Nice. So when it comes to your writing, you've written for TV shows, you've written for Good Mythical Morning, you've written your own books, podcasts, all that stuff. Where do you get your ideas from? Do you come to a project with an idea? Do people say, "Hey, I have this idea for a project," and you help them write it? Does it kind of go vice versa? How does that how does that start?
Sure. So like when you're writing for like TV and digital shows, like the Good Mythical Morning you mentioned, like you're kind of there to imitate a style a little bit. Like, obviously I think people want writers to inject a lot of themselves into things,
Sure.
but with a TV show or with an ongoing, digital series, they have a thing that they do, and you are there to do the best version of it you can. So with stuff like that, and I've done written for a lot of animation. So like they, have a style they're looking, they want you to perpetrate. So like with that stuff, when you are a writer in a writer's room, or when you are like hired to do a script for a show, like, you're there to be collaborative, and you're not there to like, break their thing. You're there
Sure.
to like do the best job with it. So, with stuff like that, I think you're supposed, I like to show up with this attitude of like, I'm here to help. Tell me what you need. I want to give you something you can use. You know, um, like if I was, working for Good Mythical Morning, and I was like, Rhett and Link should do Tokyo drifting. Like, would I love to see that? Sure. Is that what they do? Not really.
Right.
Um, so you try and like push things forward where you can, but also you want to really take stock of like the thing you're working for, and like and think a lot about what makes it work. Like and working writing some Archie comics, which I've done, is a good example of that. Like that is a very tried and true formula brand. These are characters that have existed for 100 years now, just
Yeah.
about. And like you can do crazy things with them, and they have a horror line that's very successful. And so you could chop off Jughead's head, but he still has to like food, like so they're okay with like him being mauled, by zombies, but he still has to make food jokes. So
Yeah.
I think when you're a writer in that sense, when you're working on someone else's thing, it kind of helps to think a lot about what makes this work, what's good about this, what do I like about this, and kind of try and do the best job you can. Um, yeah, and for original stuff, which I have done less of, but some, the graphic novel, you alluded to comic book writing. I had a graphic novel come out a couple years ago called Bubble. I that is a sci-fi comedy that I co-wrote with a great writer named Sarah Morgan. The art was done by Tony Cliff, the brilliant genius. And yeah, that was kind of an idea that came from me just kind of needing a writing sample. When you're out there looking for writing jobs, you need something to send people that shows I can write. So yeah, I had kind of wanting to do something kind of funny sci-fi. So the premise of Bubble is it is a kind of near future where people live under these domes, and each dome is kind of themed. There's a suburban dome, there's a there's a cool beach vibes dome, and then the one where the story takes place is the hipster dome, and it's kind of like a little Brooklyn or Silver Lake or something like that. And so from that general premise, we filled out the world with characters and kind of a big corporate espionage plot, and they all kind of became members of this gig economy where they have to fight monsters. So yeah, that was kind of an original thing that I collaborated with people on, but the germ of the idea was mine.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, I think that came from just like needing to write something, and then just kind of like following a funny idea. And I know there's a lot of different ways to kind of create an idea out of nothing, but the one I like, and I think that I use most often, is just like think of an idea that is kind of funny to me and then follow it. What next? Like, okay, if people are living under domes, how did they get there? Who lives in this dome? What's their economy like? What is their religion like? um and the thing I am pushing to people now is a graphic novel coming out next year called Youth Group that I did with a really great writer, a really great artist named Bowen McGurty. And that is a story about teenage exorcists. And that story I think has really great characters and is was surprisingly very personal. Was like when I read it back, I'm like, oh yeah, this is kind of my childhood in a wacky little horror story. But the germ of that was just like, what if modern goofy Bible study kids had to do exorcisms? Like just something that could be an SNL sketch. It could be a funny tweet or something like that. But kind of coming up with this idea that I liked, and then just kind of populating it with characters who would be in this Bible study group that does exorcisms. What's the world like? How long have the demons been there? How do you get a demon? So yeah, I think that's kind of how I create something from scratch. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And then some is perfect.
Okay.
Speaking of Bubble, I remember when the podcast was first announced.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
oh man, Jordan Moore's doing a podcast. This is fantastic. And I ate it up. It was fantastic. I was a
Oh, thanks, dude. Yeah,
huge
I guess I
fan
should
of
say
it.
the graphic novel I mentioned was based on a podcast with that same idea. So yeah.
Yeah, and I have my copy of it right over here.
Oh, cool.
I was so excited when
Heck
you
yeah.
guys adapted it,
Thanks,
and
man.
I love how you got the McElroy brothers and all the other people who
Yeah.
got to be in it. I'm a huge fan of the McElroy boys.
Yeah, they're great.
Um, but yeah, it's a great podcast, great comic, um,
Thanks.
And your youth group book, I'm very excited about that one because, just the premise, I kind of think to kind of make it relatable a little bit, I think kind of like Adam Levine from the Righteous Gemstones trying to do an
Oh yeah.
exorcism. That
Yeah,
that's hilarious to me.
me too. I love that show, and I love him on that show.
Yes, me too. And just thinking about, going to youth group and him and Keith trying to do an exorcism is
Right.
hilarious to me. So I'm super excited for this. I also wanted to talk a little bit about, since we're in the spooky month, I wanted to
Yes.
talk a little bit about Pop's Chocolate Shop. Of course, you kind of brought that up a little bit
Yeah.
before. Just the whole the whole book is incredible, but and I'm not even really a super huge horror nerd, but
Hmm.
this book was great.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
your story in it, just your and I know this has been said before where Betty started a charity bake sale to pay for the charity car wash. That's incredible.
Oh,
So
thanks.
why don't we talk a little bit about that, how
Sure.
that kind of came about?
Yeah, so Pop's Chocolate Shop Before, as you mentioned, it's an anthology spooky Archie comic, kind of set in the diner. Like, what if Pop's diner um was like crazy haunted and, the scene of various murders and cannibalism and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that God, that's so fun to work on. And I did a story in that with a great artist named Liana Congus. Um, and our story is called Soylent Teen. Ha ha ha. And you could maybe guess from the title where it goes, but
Yep. Hmm.
Betty sneaks into the diner at night and finds something untoward going on with regard to her missing classmates. And it was a ton of fun. Yeah, Liana's a super talented artist with a great style, and so it's so fun to work with them on this. And yeah, so it started with like being Twitter friends with an Archie editor, Jamie Rotante, a great editor and a great writer of Archie herself. We just followed each other on Twitter and just replied to each other's tweets and tagged each other's jokes and stuff like that. And yeah, I when I saw that she was an Archie editor, I kind of just like sacked it up and sent her a DM and said, hey, I'm sure you get a lot of these, but I'm a fan. If you ever needed someone at Archie, like, I would love to do something, keep me in mind. And yeah, and it didn't really lead to anything immediately. She was kind of nice and responded and said, we'll let you know. And so yeah, and it was one of those things that I just like bugged her about every couple of months until finally she said, we have something maybe you could work on. Yeah, so that's just a thing that that creative people have to deal with, is like how to ask for what you want without feeling like a total and complete shithead.
Yeah.
It's a skill. So yeah, I think yeah, that was just kind of born of being casual internet friends with someone and being politely persistent. So yeah.
Like Michael Scott says, you miss 99% of the shots you don't take. So
Classic Michael Scott quote. Yes.
that's awesome. All right. So, kind of going back to the McElroy boys, I've been a
Yeah.
fan of Maximum Fun for a long time.
Oh, cool.
And for some reason, it never clicked in my brain that you were the Jordan from Jordan Jesse Go.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk a little bit about your podcast?
Sure. Yeah. Jordan Jesse Go. It is a chat podcast with me and Jesse Thorne, who you might know from NPR and from the Judge John Hodgman podcast, where he's the bailiff. Yeah. So we were college buddies. I mentioned doing college radio. I did college radio with him. We did a goofy morning show, and we got up at 5 a.m. and walked to the radio station and did, bad prank calls and sketches and probably were annoying, but it didn't matter because 5 people were listening.
Yeah.
So we met in the dorms. We were like dorm buddies, and we're both kind of comedy nerds. He was into, Kids in the Hall and Tenacious D and all that stuff. And we just kind of bonded over that. And yeah, wanted to try comedy together. So we, did this goofy college radio show. And then when we graduated, I had moved to LA, and then he moved here not long after and was like, what if we did our old college radio show as a podcast? I didn't know what one was at that point. This is very
Sure.
early in the medium.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just kind of got together, in his living room and shot the shit for a couple hours every week, and then we kind of started incorporating guests. And yeah, we were early to the game, so we got a nice little following of comedy nerds. Our podcast is so pointless and premiseless. Like, it's nothing you would do these days. Like, yeah, you need a premise, you
Yeah,
need something people can latch on to. But yeah, we kind of just were shooting the shit and trying to make each other laugh and talk to cool guests. And yeah, that's the show. And we're doing it 15 years later. So
that's
yeah,
so
that's
awesome.
something we do every week, and it's a ton of fun. We have a very nice fan base, and yeah, it's a great excuse to just like talk to cool people. Yeah, and just like goof around with them. So yeah, it's a blast. I love doing it.
Yeah, that's cool. And yeah, I have a similar experience, like a decade or so ago, me and my friends, we would just sit around and talk and just shoot the shit for hours.
Mhm.
And we're like, why aren't we recording this?
Right.
Because no one wants to listen to this. Well, maybe somebody does.
Yeah.
Turns out not very many people did, but some people did. And it was a fun way to have an excuse to talk to your buddies for
Yeah.
couple hours every week. And it was that was the big part, is it was just fun to do. And like you said, now when you have a podcast, you really have to, everybody has a podcast now. So really you have to kind of find, what makes you different, what stands
Mhm.
out. There's so many rules now
Yeah.
because you have to just be different.
But
But
I will say, I think that I'll double back on myself a little bit and say that I do think these days people kind of tune in for the premise. It's
yeah, yeah,
true
oh,
crime,
sure.
it's bad movies, but I think they do stay just because they like the people, and they like
Yeah.
they like hearing people, they like shoot the shit. So I mean,
Yeah.
I do think that a good premise is a start, but I think that, like,
Yeah.
yeah, the essential core of most of these things is like people people with good chemistry who are enjoyable to listen to talking
Yeah.
to each other. So anyway.
Yeah. So I think the premise probably brings you in, but it's more, is the person that's hosting the show likable? Are they a
Right.
nice person? Are they funny?
Mhm.
Whatever. Like you said, chemistry is key
Yeah.
for sure. All right. So going a little bit back to uh, I mentioned that I'm a huge fan of pretty much all the stuff you do. Um, Cotton Candy Randy, all of your
Yes.
character work on Good Mythical Morning. You've got Cotton Candy Randy, you've got the mechanic. That's my most recent favorite one. The
Uh-huh.
mechanic that his wife ran away from with the transformer.
Right. And he hates the, yeah,
Yes. Well, not anymore. He did.
oh yeah. I gotta forget where we are in the story of that guy. Yeah, there's a recurring bit on Rhett and Link, on Good Mythical Morning, I should say, where I'm a like Michigan auto plant worker who
Yes.
has a very complicated relationship with the Transformers because his wife ran away with a Transformer at one point. But I think now where we're at in the story is he's like joined them in a thruple, and he's opened up his mind to non-monogamous relationships. So yeah, that's that's a fun one that just keeps getting weirder and weirder.
So when you're coming up with characters like that, like where do you pull that from?
So Cotton Candy Randy is another Good Mythical Morning character who is a like gross Santa who is like the spirit of International Cotton Candy Day. And he is like, and again, there's now a rich mythos. We've been doing it so long, but
Yes.
he's kind of just like a gross goblin or gross monster who may be supernatural. We don't know. Um, yeah, that really wasn't my idea. God, yeah, and to this day I don't remember who exactly asked me to do this. If someone from Mythical is listening and knows exactly who it is, let's give them credit.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the idea was like, it's International Cotton Candy Day and you're the like gross Santa of International Cotton Candy Day. So yeah, with that very vague premise, I was like, all right, okay, so I guess I'll just come on and say a bunch of gross stuff. And yeah, just I did a voice where it was the voice is me imitating a caterer they used to have who had a weird voice. There's this caterer who we would all like do impressions of, who was
Yeah.
always like, we have a lovely lemon chicken today, have some lemon chicken. And I was like, oh, I'll do the caterer voice and make everybody laugh. So that's kind of where that came from. And yeah, but then every time you do it, you add a little more to the lore, and it just gets more complicated. And yeah, here we are. We're still doing it X amount of years later, 5 or 6 years later. So yeah, it's totally fun. It's awesome. I like doing it. I don't do a lot of like acting these days. It's something that I did a little bit of when I first moved to LA, but like kind of gave it up for writing. But yeah, it's fun to have a little like character to do and a little sketch performance to do. And yeah, the mythical folks are just fun to goof around with. So yeah, it's a really yeah, it's always a good time with them.
It's really cool. I know I posted, I was getting ready to talk to Cotton Candy Randy, and a ton of my friends were like, "Oh my God, that's so exciting."
Cool.
Um, so I
Yeah, he's
assume,
got fans. There's people who have tattoos. There's a lot of Cotton Candy Randy tattoos out there. So yeah, it's really cool to see. And when it pops up on a t-shirt and stuff, that's kind of neat.
yeah, for sure. So, and I would hate myself if I don't ask. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I kind of
Uh-huh.
am. Can you hit me with a sweet nothing?
Oh, I don't have a lot of them off the dome.
Okay.
It is something that I usually think of on the way to the studio. They are not like pure improv. They are
Okay,
kind of written. And I got if I can, what are some classic ones? I don't they don't usually stay in my brain after I say them, but it's some
that's fair.
it's like, it's stuff like I have a mouse in a sock, and just yeah, come to my van later for free shrimp, stuff like that.
Nice. Just kind of just random weird shit that
Yeah,
go together.
it's either like it's either obsessive or supernatural or gross or some combination of those.
Awesome. All right, man. So I mean, if we want to just talk about youth group, that's totally fine. Other than youth group, is there anything else coming up from you that we can look forward to seeing?
Yeah, no, youth group. It's out there. It's out there for pre-order. bit.ly/youth group book or Amazon, Barnes and Noble, your local indie bookstore. Pre-order it there. No, that's kind of my next big thing. Yeah, maybe some more comic stuff that hasn't been announced yet that I will, yell about on social media when it does get announced. But yeah, youth group I'm very excited about. I think it's, one of the best pieces of writing I've ever done. And Bowen, I cannot wait for people to see Bowen's art. Bowen is a pretty spectacular genius and was great to work with. Yeah, so youth group's coming out next year. And yeah, and Mythical is still cranking out the laughs, and Jordan Jesse Go is we're cranking out our own sort of laughs every week. So yeah, both those are still ongoing and people can tune into those.
That's awesome. I'm very excited for youth group. I'm definitely going to
Oh, thanks,
get a
man.
copy of it, and I'm going to put a review on our website as soon as
Oh,
I
cool. Thank you.
get a
Thank you.
copy of it. So I'm
Yeah.
very excited to read it.
Yeah, and yeah. I hope if folks like the premise, they pre-order it. That's like it's a weird thing about the book industry that I'm learning about. It's like the
Yeah.
pre-orders are kind of a big deal. It's not something that I did in my life that much, but now
Yeah.
I've kind of gotten into the habit of pre-ordering because now I know it's weirdly important. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Now, when it comes to your projects like this or other things you're
Uh,
working on, where is it that we can stay up to date and know what's going on with you?
oh yeah. Social media. It's a mess, right?
It's awful.
Yes, I am still on the Twitter website, whatever we're calling it these days, at Jordan_Morris. Instagram is pretty fun. I'm over there, Jordan David Morris. And yeah, let's see. I mentioned it. I'll say it again. bit.ly/youth group book. You can find all your pre-order info there. And yeah, I've got a website, jordanmorris.net. If people want to go there, that has a bunch of links to the podcast and pre-ordering and all that good stuff. And yeah, I guess I should say maximumfun.org or wherever you get your podcast is where you listen to Jordan Jesse Go. And yeah, I'll be talking about stuff on there. So if there's tour dates or book events or more book info, I'll probably be talking about it there. Jordan Jesse Go. It's a podcast.
Very cool. And you can find all of that stuff because I'm going to post it on our website,
Oh, cool. Thanks, man.
along with all sorts of other nerdy news, reviews, interviews on our website, geek-network.com. You can find us at GeeksAZ on Twitter and Instagram, Geek Network on Facebook. I am CD is Weird on Instagram. The music for the show is by Polygon Horizon. They're a great band. Go check them out on Bandcamp. The logos for the show are done by my friends Chris Chandler and Mike Belcher. Go check them out. They're great comic book folks. And if you like the show, please leave a review and tell your friends because word of mouth is our friend. And remember, kids, to embrace the things that feel you're weird and always geek responsibly. Jordan, thanks so much for joining me today, man.
Thanks, man. This is tons of fun. Great chat. Thank you.
Thank you.